Here is the thing about Tyler Hoover. His channel was never really about cars. It was about what happens when someone buys exactly the wrong car and then invites you along for everything that follows. The broken exotics, the flooded luxury vehicles, the endless mechanical disasters that kept his mechanic, the car wizard, basically employed full-time. That honesty is what built his audience. So when he bought a Bugatti Veyron, most people assumed it was just that same formula, scaled up to $1 million. What they did not know was that a $500,000 tax bill was already waiting for him. The car had problems before he even took delivery. And the monthly payment he had committed to only worked if absolutely nothing went wrong. Everything went wrong. The appeal made total sense on paper. A Veyron is not just expensive in the normal exotic car way. It is expensive in a way that makes other expensive cars feel embarrassed about themselves. When it was new, it cost over $1 million. Used, it still exists in this terrifying category where a single repair bill can genuinely ruin your month, your quarter, or possibly your entire year, depending on what broke. Which is exactly why it was such perfect content for a channel like Hoovy's. If the car worked, great. He gets to live the dream on camera. If it fell apart, even better, because that is honestly what everyone came to watch anyway. The problem is that the horror stories you hear about Veyron ownership are not internet exaggerations. They are completely real, and somehow even worse up close. An oil change on this car costs somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000. Not because the oil is magic, but because the car has 16 drain plugs and you have to remove half the rear bodywork just to access them. The whole process takes around 27 hours of labor for an oil change. And that is just where it starts getting strange. Camshaft adjusters cost around $800 each as a part, which sounds almost reasonable until you find out that replacing them requires a partial engine teardown and the labor alone runs around $21,000. Tires need replacing every couple of years and cost $30,000 to $40,000 a set. The wheels themselves wear out every 10,000 miles and run another $40,000 to $50,000. Annual fluid services land somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000. And all of that is before anything actually goes wrong. So when Hoovy bought this car, the real question was never whether he could afford the monthly payment. It was whether he could survive everything the car was going to ask for after that. Hoovy structured the deal as a lease, with a monthly payment of $14,570. At the time, he thought this was the smart move. The plan was to run it through the business, write off what he could, and potentially sell it later at a profit, because Veyron values had been quietly creeping upward. He even said at one point that the car had essentially paid for itself in the first 6 months and that he was out $0. That logic is not completely crazy. It just requires everything to go right at the same time, which is a lot to ask from any car, let alone a Bugatti. What came out later is that this whole deal was not sitting on top of a stable financial foundation. It was sitting on top of a business and a personal life that were already being stretched pretty thin. And then his accountant called and told him he owed over $500,000 in taxes. The way he had structured the Bugatti deal was directly connected to how that number got so large. So now you have a $14,000 monthly payment, a $500,000 tax bill, and a car that had already started throwing warning lights before he even got it home. Somewhere in the middle of all that, he was sitting behind the wheel of $1 million Bugatti with less than $1,000 actually in his bank account. That is the part that made people stop and reread the headline. Because it was not just reckless anymore. The Bugatti had gone from being a content play to being the most expensive symptom of a much bigger problem. It did not create every fire that was burning, but it was absolutely the largest thing sitting in the middle of the room while everything else was going up in flames. The reason this particular Veyron was even attainable in the first place was because it had a known issue. It would not go into reverse. Simple enough sounding on the surface, except by the time Hoovy got to it, the car had already been through a messy diagnostic history that did not inspire a lot of confidence. At some point, a previous owner had replaced the entire transmission, which sounds like a thorough fix, until you find out that the transmission was never actually the problem. The real issue was the electronic shifter controlling it. So the previous repair was expensive, incorrect, and now Hoovy owned the aftermath of that entire situation. That alone is a red flag on any car. On a Bugatti, it is a genuinely unsettling way to start. It did not stop there. During the early inspection phase, coolant warning lights started appearing. On a normal car, you might not lose much sleep over a warning light. On a Veyron, every warning light is a potential four-figure diagnostic bill before anyone even tells you what is actually wrong. The dealer wanted $4,500 just to inspect it, not to fix anything, just to look at it properly. And that cost makes complete sense once you understand that a proper Veyron inspection means pulling off large sections of the rear bodywork and underbody panels just to access the key components underneath. What should be a routine check becomes a partial teardown before a single problem has even been identified. When they did open it up, the car was leaking oil, coolant, and transmission fluid simultaneously. Not one issue. 3 separate systems all showing problems at the same time. What made it so difficult to shake was that this was not one dramatic failure you could address and move on from. It was a pattern. The car had been misdiagnosed before he bought it, was throwing warnings almost immediately after purchase, and then revealed multiple leaks the moment someone looked at it properly. That is the kind of history that makes you wonder what else might still be hiding. And on a car where every question costs thousands of dollars just to answer, that uncertainty becomes its own kind of expensive. The first proper service visit came back at $37,825. Separately, the quote for a fresh set of factory tires was $60,000. Just the tires. Not because the dealer was being creative with the pricing, but because the Veyron uses highly specialized Michelin tires speed-rated for over 250 miles per hour, requiring specific mounting procedures and replacement on a fixed schedule regardless of how much tread is actually left. The car does not care if you have been driving it gently. The calendar says replace them, so you replace them. And all of this was landing on someone who was already paying $14,500 a month just to have the car sitting in his driveway, while a $500,000 tax bill remained very much unresolved in the background. What made people actually feel something watching the story unfold was that none of it was abstract. These were real invoices, on a car he had barely gotten to enjoy, arriving at the worst possible time during a period when money was already being pulled in 5 different directions at once. By July 2025, after just 9 months of ownership, Hovey sold the Veyron. And the reason he gave for walking away is honestly the most interesting part of this whole story. He said it had nothing to do with the repair costs. He said that supercars and hypercars on YouTube had become completely played out. That every day someone was flexing one, and nobody really cared anymore. And when he went back to filming cheap, broken cars, the kind of hoop ties his channel was originally built on, his view counts went up. That completely pulls the rug out from under the entire logic of buying the Bugatti in the first place. The car was supposed to justify itself through the content it generated. It was supposed to be the ultimate attention machine. Instead, it cost more, caused more stress, and performed worse on YouTube than cars worth a fraction of the price. YouTube as a platform rewards escalation. Every video has to be bigger than the last one. Every purchase has to top the previous one. And if you follow that logic long enough without stopping to check whether the finances actually support it, you eventually end up exactly where Hovey ended up. The Bugatti was not just a bad car purchase. It was the natural destination of a content strategy that kept pushing further than was actually sustainable. He called it one of the dumbest purchases he had ever made, which is a significant thing to admit for someone whose entire career has been built around dumb purchases. In the same month, Hovey was offloading the Veyron, a 2007 Bugatti Veyron sold at the Goodwood Festival of Speed auction for over $1.5 million, smashing its estimate entirely. The broader market was still treating these cars like the legends they are. The car was never the problem. It just was not the right car, for the right person at the right time. The Veyron was supposed to be the moment everything looked bigger. What it actually turned out to be was the moment Hovey figured out that bigger was never really the point. His audience was never there for the hypercars. They were there for the chaos, the personality, and the weird broken cars with interesting stories. The most expensive car he ever bought got outperformed on YouTube by cheap hoop ties. And that is either a brutal lesson or a very useful one, depending on how you look at it.